Yep, it's happened again. The U.S. government has partially shut down. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what's going on, why it's happening, and what it all means. Let's get right into it.
So you've probably been seeing the headlines all over the place. As of this morning, parts of the U.S. federal government have literally ground to a halt. And if you're getting a weird sense of déjà vu, well, you're not wrong. This is happening again. All right, so to really get a handle on what's going on, we need to start with the basics. What exactly just happened in Washington?
So let's do a quick refresher. Think about it this way. The government, like any huge company, needs money to pay its bills and keep running. A government shutdown is what happens when Congress can't agree on a budget to provide that money. And when that funding deadline is missed, all the so-called non-essential parts of the government have to just stop. That's the shutdown.
And that is exactly what went down. The clock ticked past midnight on January 31st, 2026. The deadline came and went without a funding deal, and bam, the shutdown was triggered.
And look, this isn't some random one-off thing. This comes just a few months after the longest government shutdown in all of U.S. history, and it's the second one to happen under this presidency. This is pretty clearly becoming a recurring political weapon.
Okay, so that's the what. But the real question, the one everyone's asking is, why? Why couldn't they make a deal this time? Well, that brings us to the heart of the conflict, the standoff over the DHS. And this is where the story gets really specific. You see, Congress had actually managed to fund most of the government. We're talking defense, health, education, all of that was good to go. The entire argument, the one single thing that held everything up, was the budget for just one agency, the Department of Homeland Security.
But this fight over DHS funding wasn't just about money. It was actually ignited by a specific and really tragic event: the reported deaths of 2 U.S. citizens during immigration raids up in Minneapolis. That single event completely changed the game, turning what should have been a routine budget talk into a major flashpoint.
And this created two sides that were just completely dug in. On one side, you had Democrats saying, no way, we are not funding DHS unless you tie it to some serious, strict reforms for immigration enforcement. And on the other, you had Republicans arguing that funding the department is non-negotiable, framing it as a matter of national security. And these weren't vague demands either. Democrats were asking for very specific things like banning masks for ICE agents to make sure they're accountable, making body cameras mandatory for every agent, creating independent groups to investigate when federal force is used, and putting much tighter rules on how warrants are issued. So, with both sides refusing to budge, a shutdown seemed pretty much guaranteed. But wait, there was a last-ditch effort to stop it. Let's look at how that deal got delayed and ultimately fell apart. Just look at that number, 71 to 29. That was the actual vote in the Senate on a spending bill late Friday night. I mean, that's a huge bipartisan majority. It shows that a compromise wasn't just possible, it had a ton of support. So, what was in this magical deal? Well, the Senate's plan was to fund most of the government all the way through September. But for the DHS, the really controversial part, they proposed a simple 2-week extension. It's a classic Washington move, kind of kicking the can down the road just to keep the lights on and buy more time for negotiators to figure things out. So if the Senate passed a deal with this massive majority, why are we in a shutdown right now? Well, the answer comes down to something almost unbelievably simple: bad timing. The Senate passed the bill late on a Friday night, but by that point, the House of Representatives had already packed up and gone home for the weekend. With nobody there to vote on it, the clock just ran out, and the shutdown was triggered automatically. So, a procedural mistake has led to some very real consequences. Now that the shutdown is here, what does this actually mean for you, for the country? Let's get into the immediate impact. Right away, the people who feel this first are the federal workers in those non-essential jobs. They get furloughed, which is a fancy word for being sent home without pay. Beyond that, it can mean a stop to all kinds of things, from federal permits to scientific research, and just a general slowdown in the government services we all rely on. Now, it's really important to remember that this is a partial shutdown.
And that means the absolutely critical, essential services. We're talking Social Security checks, Medicare, air traffic controllers, all of that will keep operating as normal. They are protected from these kinds of funding gaps.
But this whole shutdown is really just a symptom of something much, much bigger. To really get why this matters so much, we have to zoom out from the day-to-day politics and look at the bigger picture.
Because this really isn't just about budget drama in D.C. This fight over one department's funding, it's a reflection of some much deeper tensions that are running through the country right now.
This entire standoff is a huge sign of a growing demand for accountability from federal law enforcement. It's directly tied to that really intense national debate over immigration policy. And it's already sparking real-world action, like nationwide protests and even strikes against how these agencies are operating.
So that leaves us with the big question hanging over everything. Will Congress get this sorted out quickly? Or is this a sign that our political divisions are so deep now that even just keeping the basic functions of government open has become a massive challenge? For now, we'll have to wait and see.